All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Stryker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place if you want to dominate. Straight up, whether it be season-long fantasy, DFS, straight up wagering, whatever it is, we've got you covered. Would you like to know why? Because Joe Pisapia wrote the book. And I'm not just using, what is a hyperbole, euphemism, one of those things. I don't really know the definition. Literally, the Fantasy Black Book series is out there. And if you look at it, written by Joe Pisapia. So it's perfect. You need it. Also, really quickly, at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. Those are our social media handles. Make sure you get on board because we're going to be giving you a lot of information. With that said, Joe, hello and welcome. Baseball's in full swing, my friend.
It is. And I can see that vocabulary toilet paper, word of the day that I've purchased you, is not paying off. So that's a problem. It's a good thing I'm the one writing the books. As you continue to confuse all the words potentially that are going back and forth, it's a good thing that I'm the one writing the books at the end of the day. But yes, Matt Stryker, baseball is rocking and rolling. It's almost the end of April already, if you can believe it. And today we got a great show for you. Not only do we have wall-to-wall baseball like we always do, we've also got some NFL draft talk later in the show. Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros is going to join us. He and I are going to be hosting the NFL draft live for 2 nights at Fantasy Pros. So I want to pick his brain about some of the fantasy assets that are going to be available so everybody can start getting prepared for their rookie drafts and for their redrafts in August and September with some of these new names, because not everybody does watch college football. We realize that. So we want to get you comfortable, maybe some comps on some of these players as well. So a lot to get to. But first, let's get to the headlines. And of course, we got to start with Major League Baseball, and we start with the headlines there. We're going to talk about guys returning. What a nice change of pace. And not just guys, but pitchers. Oh, my goodness, Matt, how spoiled are we this morning? Justin Verlander came back yesterday. Jordan Montgomery back for the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is good because Eduardo Rodriguez going on the 60-day IL now with that lat, so he's going to be out a longer period of time. But 2 big arms for their respective rotations, 2 teams that are looking to stay competitive in very competitive divisions. Certainly Verlander coming back is huge. The back of that Houston rotation, let's be honest, the Houston rotation, once Framber Valdez went down, has not been great outside of Christian Javier. That's been the only guy. Hunter Brown was decent this past week, which is a step up from dreadful, which is the last 3 starts before that. Yep. But Verlander certainly so desperately needed in that rotation, so that's a huge piece there for them. Also coming back, Max Scherzer apparently. So we thought that Max Scherzer was going to be gone probably sometime till June. No, it looks like he could be back before May 1st. It looks like he's going to go out on a rehab assignment, actually. Next Wednesday is what he's ticketed for. Matt, how surprised were you when you heard this news about Max Scherzer basically moving up his timetable by not just a couple weeks, but by an entire month?
Not at all. I mean, don't you know the term wily veteran? I come from the pro wrestling world. I understand exactly what's happening. From a fantasy perspective, if you're low on pitching, this would be the way to go to try to grab that as the stash. But it's not surprising to me because you have these kind of guys. They are few and far between that kind of know that it's a long season. And I'm not saying they circle certain dates on the calendar, but they circle certain dates on their calendar. This is going to be fun. Let's see how long he lasts. Maybe the All-Star break, he takes another stint, comes back around August. It's up to you. How many spots do you have in your lineup?
Well, I don't know how long Tristan McKenzie's going to last because apparently he's been pitching through a torn elbow ligament. And now he elected not – I don't know, but apparently not well because the ERA is at 6. So I guess that's the big question. Certain guys who say, you know what, I'm not going to get Tommy John. I'm going to rehab. I'm going to do some other things because I want to try to work through it and pitch through it. Well, pitching through it's not working for Tristan McKenzie, and that's a problem. They've already lost Shane Bieber in this rotation. And it seems like inevitable for Tristan McKenzie's season to come to an end at some point here sooner than later. I mean, I just can't imagine continuing to pitch in this circumstance with this performance level you're getting out of him is any good. So I guess the bigger question, the meta question, if you will, Matt, is what's going to happen here if McKenzie's gone, Bieber's already gone? Do the Guardians just start selling off pieces sooner than later?
No, what happens here is that you go and you still look at a team like the Twins for your futures with regards to taking that division. Because Joe and I were talking before the show came on the air that if you look at the standings right now, there's going to be maybe 2 or 3 switches. But outside of that, what you're seeing, the cream is starting to rise to the top if you've been watching baseball. If you take a look at what happens here, if the Guardians do lose McKenzie, look, Allen's been really good, and they always find a way, they being the Guardians, the organization, always find a way to rebuild and to be competitive. They're a very good baseball team. If you watch Guardian baseball, even just for a couple innings, you'll see the difference when you put on different teams. They do the little things that Joe and I often talk about and remember fondly. But with that said, what you do is you still go and you circle a team like the Twins, maybe even the Royals. You find good plus money on those two teams to win the American League Central, especially with Cleveland having pitching troubles, Joe.
Yeah, Texas having some problems too with Bradford going on the IL. They brought up Jack Leiter and a lot of fanfare around the debut of Jack Leiter. Unfortunately, things did not go so great for him. He looked very hittable in that start. Had a good first inning. Everybody got super excited. Then, unfortunately, gave up 7 runs in 3 2/3. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this or make too much out of it. It's a kid's first start. Clearly, he was incredibly emotional. If you saw him before the game, too, it looked like he was having a panic attack almost in terms of the breathing that was going on there. And his dad was a very emotional pitcher, too. If you recall, back in the day, that was why the Yankees kind of moved on from him, because he was a guy that just could not get a hold of his emotions. And it wasn't until he got traded to Toronto before things started to really click for Al Leiter. And then subsequently, a great run with the Marlins and probably his best run, I would say, with the Mets, too, in that veteran stage. So Jack Leiter, an interesting guy because he had such a great college career, was a number 2 overall pick, I believe, if memory serves, and then has kind of toiled in the minor leagues for a few years. All of a sudden, things have started to get back on track. He was really good at AAA, 25 strikeouts, 3 walks. The ERA was a little high, but again, with the limited innings, sometimes those ERAs can be inflated. Do you want to overreact to this debut of Jack Leiter, or do you want to give him a little bit more time?
No, I want to understand from, dare I say, the adult table, what the organization chose to do. Why not get all these butterflies out now? Would you rather him have that breathing exercise thing for the entire nation to see in the middle of April or in the middle of September? So now we can see the growth and maturation. That's one thing Joe and I talk about a lot, especially from a wagering perspective. You're still wagering on human beings. So what's their emotional and mental aptitude? Where are they? What am I putting my money into? Same thing with stocks. Is it a volatile stock? Is that a volatile player? So I'd much rather see this happen now and understand, send them down, figure it out, puff your chest out down there, come back up, maybe again in the summer. This is going to be very fun. Remember, we had this conversation now, Joe.
All right, fun trivia for Matt Stryker. Okay. Matt is a fountain of useless information, as I am as well. Who did the Yankees acquire for Al Leiter in 1990? Do you recall? I'll give you a hint.
Where was the other team?
Sent to the Blue Jays for an outfielder. Blue Jays outfielder. Who was it?
Not Mel Hall. Blue Jays outfielder.
Not Mel Hall. No, good name from the past, though. Hell of a right field arm.
Blue Jay. I got nothing.
Jesse Barfield.
Jesse Barfield. Dang it. I would have gotten there with George Bell, Jesse Barfield. Sure, I would have. Great.
I know you would have eventually. No Lloyd Mosby, unfortunately. But this is going to, I can tell you, knowing Matt, as long as I've done shows with him, he's going to be irritated that he didn't get that for the next 2 hours. And every single break, he's just going to keep saying Jesse Barfield. He's going to start looking up stats. He's going to go through Jesse Barfield stuff. But luckily, in between the breaks, we're going to give you a lot of baseball here. We come back, we're going to continue to talk about some of the prospects down on the farm who can help your fantasy team. One is up already. A few others might be on the way sooner than you realize. And there's one that is absolutely lighting up the minor leagues, and it's Paul Skeens, and everyone's talking about him. We're going to give you our thoughts. We return right here on FST. We'll be right back after this.
Just tossed an air ball, like in a critical. You're up by 2 with 20 seconds left. You said, give me the ball, LeBron James. You tossed an air ball, and there was AD under the bucket fighting everybody, and he ends up going to the free throw line. They use Tavares as a friggin' pinata tonight. Dude, I know you're old, but get it together. This is your last run at something, man. This is your career, bro. Don't go out like this. Oh, it's hard watching this.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. And that's just what they are. So now If Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a Posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Dominating tonight.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate, whether it be your season-long fantasy, your DFS, your straight-up wagering, whatever it is, with regard to baseball, football, we've got you covered. The reason we came in laughing is because I think Joe's onto something here as a new vocation amongst many, is to be a stand-up comedian to the fantasy sports genre, to do the stand-up bits for baseball and for fantasy sports. I really think there's a market out there. I really do. I think you can make a lot of money, especially with names people don't know.
No, I think it's a very small room I'm playing to. No. That is a very small room, I'm pretty sure. But then again, there's no small rooms, just small talents. That's what I've been told. But speaking of talents, Matt, it's always a good thing to continue to look down on the farm. I know Heston Kjerstad was a guy we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
He continues to hit home runs at a ridiculous pace. I don't know how he's going to get called up to Baltimore. They're kind of squeezed right now, but certainly it looks like at some point you got to call this kid up because he's just crushing the ball. But the first guy we're going to talk about is Jonathan Clase. And no, I did not misspeak. It's Jonathan. So it's not a misprint. It's not a typo. He is not named by Tony Danza from Who's the Boss. It's Jonathan. Instead, Jonathan Clase in the minor leagues this year has been very good. 45 at-bats, 9 runs, 14 hits so far, 2 homers, 11 RBI, 3 steals. He's also hitting .311 down at AAA with a .396 OBP and a 1,018 OPS. Now, those are some serious stats. He had 2 hits yesterday. He's getting everyday playing time. Now, he is hitting lower in the order, but Clase is a really good young player. The Mariners have been struggling offensively. We know Julio has been collectively struggling. Again, a good weekend for Julio, but the Rockies seem to be a cure-all for any problems that might ail an opposing team, whether it be pitchers or whether it be hitters. So luckily, something in the schedule is breaking there. But the Mariners kind of need a little injection there because between Julio and Jorge Polanco struggling, bringing up a guy like Clase who has power, who has speed, who's made good contact, obviously, and just, has all the tools to be a successful guy, there's no reason to hold him back. Seattle's all in. So whether this is a period of time to showcase him in a trade for a bigger bat at some point, which it could be. We talked about guys like Alonso. We talked about some other players that might be available at some point down the road. Who knows? Could be that. But also could just be Seattle continuing to, build from within and Clase, the recent guy there. And in terms of the waiver wire, we're going to talk about him. He is not rostered in nearly the amount of leagues he should be by now. So, Matt, what do you think about Clase and what do you think about Tony Danza's fine
well, okay, so thanks for bringing it back full circle. So to the members of the tribe listening, we'll give Joe a pass in his Torah naivete. The origin of the name is Yonatan. Yonatan, the best friend of David, who went on to become king. And they talk about a friendship between two men, one that would parallel even the friendship and love that a man would have with a woman. You should go read it. It's a fantastic story. In any event, the reason I like Clase is because he hits low in the order. He extends that Mariners lineup. They certainly need it. Joe's right. They've been struggling. It's still only April. Now, imagine this team with an extended long lineup clicking on all cylinders. When you start to get Julio going, you know he's a notoriously slow starter. Clase is certainly a guy. He also has sneaky speed. Don't sleep on that. And position eligibility. He can play both infield and outfield. So you have to realize when you're getting into the trenches here, if he stays up, especially down low at the order, he can start to turn things over. Baseball's a changing game. So the way we wager on it, Joe, definitely changes. All right, this next guy we're going to go to here, you mentioned before we came on that it's a conversation more so about moving on from another player than it is about taking advantage of a guy down in Houston that's been raking Sugarland. So talk to me about Joey Lowe from your neighborhood.
Hey, my people, Joey Lowe Perfido. Jose Abreu has not been good, folks, for the Houston Astros. I think that is an understatement. He's hitting around 100 right now, and last year was a bad year for Jose Abreu. Here you go. Look at the stats for Lowe Perfido. They've been terrific. 64 ABs, 21 runs, 19 hits, 10 homers. That's right, 10 already, double digits heading into the weekend. 2 steals, hitting 297 with a 397 OBP and an 1194 OPS. Lowe Perfido is just crushing the ball right now. He's a strong left-handed hitter. Lowe Perfido has obvious power. It will be a great lineup to drop him into. And it's unfortunate because Jose Abreu is a player that's had a really great career. In fact, from a fantasy perspective, I don't know if there's many players that were as consistently good every single year for a period of time as Jose Abreu. And then when you dig deeper into his stats, the guy hit against lefties, he hit against righties, he hit in the first half, the second half, at home on the road. He was always Jose Abreu. He was always spectacular. That age, I guess, has caught up to him. Perhaps he's a little older than we might realize, too. You never know sometimes with the Cuban imports just exactly how old everybody really is, but that's a story for another show.
12.
Lowe Perfido is going to be a guy, I think, that is going to get an opportunity sooner than later. So, therefore, I would be adding him. Singleton is not the answer there. Jose Abreu is not the answer. The Astros need some more help, and Lowe Perfido, I think, can provide it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And for those that don't know, we often talk about Joe's book, the Fantasy Black Book series. And it's not just Joe. It's a bevy of writers and prevailing minds in the industry. But this season, as I understand it, Joe, you personally wrote the pitching matchups. For a book as successful, as an industry as successful as it's been, for you to come back around at this point, and however many years this book's been out with all the minds that collectively come together, for you to personally come back and write the pitching. I've been really paying attention to some of the pitchers that you've been talking about. And even I have been like, I haven't really heard that name. So Houston, while they have Lowe Perfido, they need pitching. And you have a name down on the farm down there. And I think it's down in Sugarland, right? So I think you have a guy here who's ready to go. Who's it going to be?
AJ Blabaugh. 2 starts so far this year, 15 innings in those 2 starts. He is undefeated. He is 2-0, undisputed right now, 19 strikeouts. The ERA right now is under 1. It's at 0.59. The whip is at 0.65. The guy's been untouchable. Got to see some footage of him in his most recent start, thanks to a buddy of ours, Chris Clegg, in the industry. And let me tell you, it was very impressive stuff. So Hunter Brown has struggled. Again, this last start has been better for him. Hopefully that's a turnaround. But even JP France hasn't been good. You know, Verlander's back, but Framber Valdez is still on the shelf. He's starting to work his way back from that elbow inflammation. So that's an issue that's going to linger potentially, or maybe even at some point reappear. But this guy's been so consistently good so far in his first 2 starts. Let's see how it develops. But this is more of a watch list guy. In dynasty leagues, I think I'd be adding and stashing him if he wasn't already rostered. But he's clearly emerging as a guy that's going to be a part of this Houston rotation at some point this year, in my opinion. And then we could see as the future goes on, look, Justin Verlander's 41 years old. He is not going to pitch forever, no matter how much you love Justin Verlander. So the future in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, AJ Blabaugh might be a guy that you might have to start looking at, and he could help you in 2024 as well.
Joe, with the time remaining, the conversation has to be had. We're talking about Paul Skeens now. For those that don't know, this is the darling down in the minors, throwing over 100. I mean, if he's throwing 100 pitchers, what's it ratioing out to? I think about 83 of them are flirting near or at 100 or over. We are lauding this. We are lionizing it. Joe, I'm asking the question straight away, and I hate to use it this way, but what happens when the kid's arm falls off? And everyone goes, oh, okay, and they go on to the next thing. We're sending such a mixed message. All the social media is great. He's a great kid. He stayed after his start and stayed and signed autographs for every single person in the line. This is a minor league guy who's got to take the bus, not get on a luxury plane. He did that. So the point I'm trying to make is, Skeens is great. Yeah, Adam, wonderful. But there's a bigger question, a bigger conversation needs to be had. Time is yours.
Yeah, look, Skeens this year, I continued at the beginning of the year. I said, look, think of him in season-long roto leagues as the Strasburg debut, right? You had about 70 amazing innings from Strasburg, and you'll take them this year. But you'll take them in that context of a season-long roto league. If you're in a head-to-head format in a redraft league and you have Skeens, when he gets called up, his value will be at its peak. And you have to understand he's going to be managed. I mean, he's being managed right now very carefully, which we could talk about that for days, whether that's a good thing or not. 65 pitches in his last start, 37 were strikes, 34 of them, by the way, were over 100 miles an hour. So that is a stunning number. And you look at the numbers so far, he hasn't given up an earned run all year, or a run. The whip is at .71. Over 12 innings, he has 27 strikeouts. He is dominating. There is obviously nothing for him to prove at the AAA level. So he's going to be up in Pittsburgh for a certain amount of time, but for how long? So if you're in head-to-head leagues and he's being limited as great as he is, what's it going to look like in August and September? What's it going to look like in your fantasy playoffs? Those are questions you have to ask yourself. And if you can flip a Skeens for a mid to upper tier 1A kind of pitcher, you should think about that in redraft leagues, because those guys might be there in September. Skeens will not. More FST when we return right after this.
He just tossed an air ball, like in a critical. You're up by 2 with 20 seconds left. He said, give me the ball, up LeBron James, and he tossed an air ball. And there was AD under the bucket fighting everybody, and he ends up going to the free throw line.
They use Tavares as a friggin' pinata tonight. Dude, I know you're old, but get it together. This is your last run at something, man. This is your career, bro. Don't go out like this. Oh, it's hard watching this.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. Taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. That's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Denominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2
coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate, whether you're in season-long fantasy leagues, rotisserie points, head-to-head, however you want to call it, whether you're just straight playing DFS or wagering, which is how Joe and I, we've been talking. For the month of April, we've had to be real careful, but we're still trying to build the bankroll, so come May, we can start to play with their money. And it's been a fun ride, but certain pitchers, a lot of people want to pull their hair out over one start, two starts. So let's take a look at some pivotal starts for some big names, and let's get Joe Pisapia. After how many years can I still say this name, Joey P? Can I just do Joey P? Joe.
Sure, everybody else
Joe.
does. Ass dear.
But I like to give it the respect it deserves. Joe Pisapia. Let's hear what Joe has to say about certain pivotal starts of pitchers. Oh, gosh, alliteration's going to get me. Joe, just take it away. Some pictures we have to look at, some pivotal starts. Do it. Take it. Words. Yours.
I will. I'll mercifully. Yes, we'll definitely do that. But there's that early April concern that sets in, right? You put a lot of draft capital in a pitcher, they have one or two bad starts, all of a sudden the panic level starts to set in. So this is a nice deep breath segment for all of you that were worried about certain pitchers, that things looked much better this past week. We're going to start with Kevin Gausman, who his first two starts had 11 earned runs. Now, he was behind everybody else because a little bit of a shoulder issue that crept up there at spring training. So you can make some excuses that perhaps he was just ramping up, or you can make excuses that he's hurt and things are going to end terribly. Fortunately, it was a good start this week against the Yankees. Just keeping it real. That's what I do around here. Right. 5 innings against the Yankees. He gave up just 4 hits, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts for him. So it was a much better start for Kevin Gausman, but most importantly, the velocity is where it should be, in that mid-90s resting velocity, and that's what you want to see out of Kevin Gausman. That's his bread and butter, that mid-90s fastball, and that's a good thing. So from the fact that the velocity's been good, the fact that he hasn't shown any issues or complaints about the shoulder, and it was also a very formidable Yankees lineup. A lineup that's got Soto, a lineup that's got Aaron Judge. So good things there from Kevin Gausman going forward, hopefully, for the rest of the season. But as you can see, this start was very pivotal. This was huge because I think 3 bad starts in a row, all the discussions start becoming, is Kevin Gausman healthy? What's going to happen with this rotation if he's not? So this is a huge deal for him. Now, can he get back into that Cy Young race? Maybe. I mean, Luis Castillo had a great start yesterday. There's another guy you could have put on this list. But again, his strikeout to walk's been good. It's been just more some bad luck and some weird things for Castillo. I still think Castillo is a guy you could look at Cy Young contendership. Gausman's always a guy in that conversation. Corbin Burns in that conversation. There's another pitcher, too, we're going to talk about in just a minute also that's going to be in that conversation as well in the American League. But for Kevin Gausman, managers, you could breathe a sigh of relief. This was a really good start for him, and now you can feel good about starting him the rest of the season, just leaving him in your rotation and not worrying, and fingers crossed he's put the worst part of the season behind him.
And I like what Joe's done here with that answer, just giving a little bit of calm to everyone, having that whole entire April panic. But with that said, maybe this does implore many of us to go out and start to think of some pitching depth and starting to go out, because if you drafted a Gausman and then this next pitcher as well, you're going to start to panic here early on. You're going to start to look for pitching depth. You're going to see that all these arms are starting to pop, and now you're going to panic. Don't. So I like what you're doing here, Joe. Another pitcher is a guy that, thank you, I needed your advice because I have shares of this next pitcher. So let's talk a little bit about Logan Webb. I'm a believer. Your thoughts?
Well, Logan Webb was the most hittable guy in spring, and that's not his norm. But there was a good start against Arizona, 7 innings, 2 hits, no earned, 1 walk, 5 Ks. Now, why is that important? The 2 hits. Circle that one because, again, spring he was getting knocked around. He gave up 23 hits in his first 3 starts. That's not the Kevin Gausman we know. He is a guy that is much tougher to square up. So whatever he was working through, hopefully he has gotten past it. And also, fun side note, too, the Arizona Diamondbacks absolutely struggle in San Francisco the last couple of years. They are 5-25 against San Fran in San Fran. For whatever reason, they just own them. So if you're in that wagering market and you see that on the schedule or Arizona's going to San Francisco, you should start investing in San Francisco. The Giants are just pummeling them recently. But this is a really important start against a good lineup that I think people, still have a lot of respect for, certainly. Gurriel's very good. I know Corbin Carroll struggled this year, but Logan Webb, more than anybody, I think, to me, also needed to show something here. You needed to show the dominant guy that wasn't going to get hit around the ballpark. And finally, you saw that out of Logan Webb. So that is a very good sign here. If you bought low on him, terrific. If you have him like Matt and you have him in multiple leagues and you're starting to get a little worried, I think this is a start to kind of, put your fears aside. And now you can, again, go out there, feel confident setting your lineup with Logan Webb, because this was a very good start against a good lineup. So now hopefully going forward, he can build on this and kind of shed away these last, few spring starts that were just terrible, and the first 2 starts of the year that were kind of underwhelming as well.
Yep. Joe, you're a master chef. You know better than anyone that just certain meats need to thaw in certain ways. And I'm not being funny. You can apply it. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to create something. We need to let these guys thaw out. All right, from St. Francisco, let's go to St. Diego, a pitcher that Joe and I were on in early season previews, and then he comes back with a fantastic performance. What does the future portend for the Padres and Michael King?
Michael King was struggling with walks, and that is not usually something you see with Michael King. So this was a really good start for him against Milwaukee. Now, granted, this was a Milwaukee lineup that did not have Christian Yelich in it. He's been out with a back issue. But regardless, Michael King was dominant. And this was the guy that we got very excited about. This was the guy that we were running the draft because he was going so late. We thought he had upside of throwing up number 1 starter performances. And you saw one of these this past week, which made you feel really good. 7 2/3, 2 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, and 10 strikeouts. This was a dominant Michael King outing. This is what you wanted to see. And I'll venture to say, I don't want to give people excuses, but I think that the weird end of spring training for the Padres, where the Padres had to go to Korea to play those games, and he was working in relief there and then coming back and having to start, I think he was completely off in terms of his pattern and rhythm. And it took him a couple of turns through the rotation to get back on top of that. And he has. And pitchers are creatures of habit. They have routines. Some of them are just maniacal about them. And King might be one of those guys, and that would explain a lot of what went wrong in the first few starts for him. But it's the walks that were really his undoing. And that is very atypical of Michael King, whether you look in the minor leagues or his work with the Yankees or even at San Diego now in this last start. That's the Michael King we wanted to see. He was going and drafted right around Cole Reagans. Reagans has been really good up until yesterday. Not a good start for him. Let's not panic about that. But Michael King, Cole Reagans, those are 2 guys that are going to more often than not, I think, this year, give you great returns on investment. You've already seen it from Reagans. This week was a down week from him, but an up week from Michael King. You're going to see some ups and downs from these guys as they continue to be full-time starters over 30 starts. But I think it was a really good start here for Michael King, one that I think will turn the corner for him, and hopefully going forward, he'll continue to build on as the season goes on.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Look, overall, this is a fantastic segment. And looking at our pitcher portfolio, if you will, these are all long plays, long stocks. We're not looking to turn these pitchers over in any capacity at all, just based on A, their draft capital, and B, what Joe's talking about is what the back of their baseball card is telling us. And this conversation opens up the door for George Kirby. And I think it's fitting to end this segment with George Kirby, because I think as Kirby goes, Seattle's going to go. And I think you're going to see a big difference from this team 30 days from now.
Yeah, George Kirby, another guy, we talked about it last week, that the problem with George Kirby for me was that he was just throwing too many strikes. He was 2 around the strike zone, which I know that was like, we wanted to throw strikes. We do, but you don't want to be too predictable either. You want to be hitters to come in there and just be completely comfortable in the batter's box. So Kirby had to work a little bit more of the inside, a little bit more of the outside, start to stretch the batter's eye a little bit. And he did that in his most recent start against Cincinnati, which is a more free-swinging team. We understand that too. Sometimes matchups will dictate this, but it is just April. So panicking about a guy like George Kirby was probably very stupid. But in this start earlier this week against Cincinnati, a big turnaround. 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned, no walks, 6 Ks. Kirby's not a guy that's going to walk a lot of people. As I said, George Kirby is a guy that you could put in this conversation for American League Cy Young. I think with Garrett Cole missing a few months, it is very possible there that he is completely out of this race. Even if he does come back and dominate, it's going to be really hard, I think, to have the body of work to really compete for this award this year. So Burns, Castillo, Kirby, Pablo Lopez, those are some of the bigger names in the American League that you could be watching. But so far, it looks like, again, breathing a sigh of relief, not just for Castillo yesterday, but also for George Kirby earlier in the week. And I kept saying all week, buy on Mariners. Buy on Mariners. We talked about Julio Rodriguez last week, right? We told you the April stats in his career. Guess what? We're almost at the end of April. What do you got? 4 for 5 yesterday. I mean, like this is Julio Rodriguez is a guy that you're going to take rest of season over almost anybody. Here's a fun question. I want to ask you this because we've had this discussion on my show earlier this week on Fantasy Pros MLB. We talked about the hot start of Mike Trout. Question for you. Do you want to buy into the hot start of Mike Trout? Would you rather have Trout rest of season from today on, or would you rather have Julio Rodriguez taking into account what Mike Trout has not done, which is give you full seasons of work for the last 4 or 5 years?
I will answer with a great story given to me by Gangrel, the professional wrestling legend. And he told me that in his first trip to Japan, Dr. Death Steve Williams gave him advice, and I kept it. A bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. And what he meant was take the dates, don't take the promises. The thing with Julio Rodriguez is he's shown me that he can stay on the field. Mike Trout, I'm in love with what you can do. And yeah, it'll be fantastic to see you do it over 130, 50, 162 games, dare I say. But I don't trust you. And I'm being honest. So a bird in hand, Julio Rodriguez is worth 2 in the bush, Mike Trout. There it is.
There you go. And all these pitchers are certainly of a special brood, you might say. There you go. Yeah. Inside wrestling reference for those of you who enjoy it. You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some guys in the last 7 days who have had some fantastic baseball statistics and some that would like to potentially wipe away the memory, if you will, of the last week. So we're going to give you the 3 up and 3 down in Major League Baseball and what you should be doing about it. Plus, don't forget, in hour 2, we've got fantasy football too. We've got draft talk with Derek Brown. We've got a fun show, including some stats of the day. So don't go anywhere because FST continues to roll right here on SportsGrid TV. We'll be right back right after this.
Just tossed an air like in a critical. You're up by 2 with 20 seconds left. You said, give me the ball up LeBron James. You tossed an air ball. And there was AD under the bucket fighting everybody, and he ends up going to the free throw line.
They use Tavares as a friggin' pinata tonight. Dude, I know you're old, but get it together. This is your last run at something, man. This is your career, bro. Don't go out like this. Oh, it's hard watching this.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. And that's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a Posturepedic, what do they call it? A Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He's ready to roll. Dominating tonight.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight
you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST, where the cadence of speech and the meter of words matter. Joseph, isn't that right? So here we are, Fantasy Sports Today. I love when I get the smile, the true, genuine smile. Fantasy Sports Today, Matt and Joe with you here. It's time for 3 Up and 3 Down. I'll let you respond, and I'll let you talk about what Kyle Tucker is doing. He's a bright spot.
Yeah, Kyle Tucker has definitely been a bright spot. Talk about a guy that's had a fantastic start to the season. And the last 7 days have been no joke whatsoever. But, Kyle Tucker on the year, the stats have been great. He was a first-round talent with good reason, and he's delivering. 3 homers in the last 7 days from Friday to Friday, 6 runs, 8 RBI, and a .316 batting average with a .1466 OPS. Thank goodness for Kyle Tucker, ladies and gentlemen. On the year as well, let's just say 5 homers, 17 RBI. He's got 4 steals, so he's giving you power, he's giving you speed. This guy's in his prime. He's got an OBP, Matt, of 400 on the season so far. At age 27, this is not even peak Kyle Tucker. There's a possibility we're going to see another leap. So now it becomes a conversation of, was Kyle Tucker undervalued potentially going into the draft? I saw him kind of floating around there anywhere from 5 to 10 sometimes going as late as. So Kyle Tucker, I think, is one of these assets in these keeper league, dynasty league formats that I think has got to be referred to as a top 5 now. If you're looking for holes in the game, I just don't see it. As long as Alvarez stays healthy too, he's going to have that line of protection. Now, granted, what's going to get tricky here is you start to get guys like Altuve starting to get a little older. What happens there? The Loperfitos of the world, like this next group that's coming for the Astros, hopefully they deliver. Because we all remember the Astros are missing draft picks for a few years, so they didn't get to necessarily restock that farm system the way they wanted to. And they made a big deal last year dealing a bunch of prospects to the Mets for Justin Verlander, if you recall. So some of the guys are out of that system, the Drew Gilberts of the world, like those guys are gone. So like, what are we going to look forward to next for the Astros? They've got to hit on a couple other guys. That's very important if they're going to continue to be competitive. And it's been a sluggish start to the year for them. But overall, Kyle Tucker, again, at age 27, he is just entering his prime, and he has been so good. I mean, outside of Acuna, Julio Rodriguez, trying to think of some other guys that you would covet in fantasy over Kyle Tucker. There's not a whole lot of them, Matt.
That's Freeman. No, I'm glad you brought it up because from a wagering perspective, when you mentioned Alvarez, and I would like to get an update on Alvarez's health. He definitely went to check something on his thumb, and maybe during the break or during the segment, someone can get on that. But with that said, from a wagering perspective, you're talking about certain guys, certain teams. When you look at teams like Atlanta, we're all jumping on the Acunas, the Olsons, the Rileys. Those are the first names we always go to. For the Dodgers, it's always going to be Betts, Freeman, Smith, Ohtani, names we go to. So when we have these type of conversations about certain types of teams and players, Tucker, Altuve, Alvarez, these are the names where we go. So yeah, to your point, Tucker is definitely valuable. And from another wagering standpoint, and I'm laughing because I'm remembering the line from, I think it's Curtis Armstrong on Revenge of the Nerds, that we've got Bush. From a wagering standpoint, the Chicago Cubs are very fun, and Michael Bush has been a huge part of it. And I saw it in the bleachers, right? They had the big sign, we've got Bush. So they understand it as well. And they do. They just have to keep him and keep this entire team productive. Your thoughts about Michael Bush in Chicago?
Michael Bush on fire. He had a bunch of days in a row with home runs, and that got him on this list. Like, frankly, he did. Patrick Wisdom came back, and he's just pretty much going to hang out on the bench, it feels like, because Michael Bush, once upon a time, was, a very good prospect in that Dodger system. They'd love to have him because the bottom part of that Dodger lineup has not been great. That was our big concern, right? Health of the rotation, second part of that lineup. So far, both of those problems have been problems, but yet the top half has been so good with Mookie Betts at the top and Freeman and Ohtani that they've carried them. But what happens when those guys come back down to earth a little bit or struggle a little bit? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. But regardless, Michael Bush as a player the last 7 days has been spectacular. 4 homers, 5 runs, 6 RBI, hitting .391 over that span with a .1419 OPS. You look at what Michael Bush has done. this was another one of these players in terms of return on investment, Matt, that we were so excited about going into the season. He had dual position eligibility in most leagues. He was a player that had pop, and people were concerned with Morrell, with Wisdom, with all these guys. Like, how does Michael Busch fit in? Michael Busch just hits. And like I said, they could really use him right now because that would give them flexibility with Mookie Betts. But the Dodgers, made hard decisions. They continue to be a team that's trying to push forward. But Busch is one of those guys, I think, that for the Cubs, we talked about early in the year. I like the Cubs the most. Shoto Imanaga was a big reason why. He had another good start yesterday. I mean, that guy continues to be outstanding. He's been stellar. Justin Steele working his way back too. When these two guys are at the top of that rotation, and you got guys like Bellinger starting to heat up, Michael Busch is going to be a big part of why the Cubs are going to be competitive all year long. And I think Michael Busch is one of the players that people are going to look back on and go, man, what a great season for Michael Busch. I do think he's a 25 to 30 home run guy. I don't think it's a fluke for Michael Busch. Will there be peaks and valleys? Sure, he's a young player. But so far, he has been absolutely incredible. And he was floating around waiver wires in some shallow leagues. Hopefully, you picked him up in the early stages of the season and you've been able to reap the rewards because Michael Busch has been spectacular. And the Cubs are a real threat to win that Central this year.
So essentially, they're real and they're spectacular. All right, I like it. So this is a fantastic segment. It truly is. We're going pitching, hitting, pitching. Let's go to Philadelphia now, where they seem to have figured it out. Knock wood for all my Philly fans. The bullpen's been all right. Starting rotation, and it's not from the guys you expect. It's Ranger Suarez, and it's this next guy, Chris Sanchez, that is really helping Philadelphia. Thoughts?
Yeah, Ranger Suarez with a shutout earlier in the week, but look at Sanchez recently, too. Last 7 days for him, 12 innings, a win, 16 strikeouts, just 4 walks. The lefty has pitched to a .75 ERA and a 1.08 whip. The Phillies were also my pick going into the year to win the East because, as far as I was concerned, whether or not you had the Atlanta Braves rotation fall apart in any manner, the one thing you couldn't afford to lose was Spencer Strider, and they lost that. And then Max Fried has not been great. You look at the age of Charlie Morton, the wear and tear of Chris Sale. There's a lot of questions there, I think, in that rotation. As great as that lineup is, and now they're dealing with another injury, too, in the lineup with Ozzie Albies being out. So the Phillies have a unique opportunity here because you knew Nola and Wheeler were going to be good at the top. It was what were you going to get out of Ranger Suarez? What were you going to get out of Sanchez? What are you going to get out of the other guys in this rotation? And so far, you're getting a lot. Now, I do want to throw in the caveat. Some of these performances were against the Rockies. And the Rockies lineup, as we continue to say, is the gift that keeps on giving in fantasy and in wagering. You're just trolling them all day long if you can. The White Sox, the A's to a certain degree, and, of course, the Rockies. But regardless, if these guys maintain anything close to this pace, the Phillies, I think, for the first time in a very long time, are not going to be the team that struggles in the first half and then has to flip the switch after the All-Star break and get red hot to get in the playoffs. This is a team that could easily win this division. I don't think the Mets are a real threat in this division. The Nationals and Marlins are not real threats in this division. It's really, can you beat the Braves? And looking at the depth of rotation, the depth of this batting order, I think the Phillies can do it this year. I do think it's the year the Phillies get to the World Series again. I do think this is a situation where the Braves are vulnerable for the first time in a while, and it's because of the injury at the top of that rotation. So if you've got future investments to make, I think the Phillies in the East is a really good one right now.
Great job as always, Joe. Honestly, man, tip of the cap, and I do it several times each and every week. Let's keep the conversation moving. Talking about how one division seems so clear-cut, let's completely have the other side of that coin is looking at the American League West, and if you look at it currently, you see it's flipped upside down. You have Houston at the bottom, and it's a reason is because of their pitching. So if they're going to be so far underwater, what are they going to do come June, July, and then, dare I say, those dog days of August? JP France, I mean, where's the answer?
Yeah, they are 8 games under 500 right now, but it is only April, so there's plenty of time. Now, you can argue, too, they haven't had Framber Valdez. They just got Justin Verlander back, but JP France and some other guys in this rotation, you had Spencer Arrighetti come up there with mixed results. France, 2 starts, 9 innings, 12 hits, 10 earned runs over his last 2 starts. Not good. He's not striking out a lot of guys, just 7, just walking 5. ERA sits at 10 over that span with a 1.89 whip. So it has not been good for JP France, but it's not been good for Hunter Brown. It's not been good for a lot of these guys at the back end of this rotation here. So you need Justin Verlander to be Justin Verlander. Like that at the end of the day, like that's what we're looking at here. Team ERA wise too, it's been a problem here for the Houston Astros. Right now I'm trying to look, they are 29th in the league in team ERA at 5.03. So when you're talking about the starting rotation, you're talking about the bullpen, you're not going to be a playoff team with a 5 ERA collectively as a team. It's just not going to happen. It is only April. If Framber Valdez comes back healthy, if Justin Verlander continues to be Justin Verlander and can make 26, 27 starts this year, this might be a really intriguing time to buy on the Houston Astros collectively, not just in fantasy, but in the wagering market as well, because there is time here for them to right the ship. And there's time for some of the other teams ahead of them to fail. Let's be honest. But I still like the Mariners regardless in this division. I think long-term that pitching is far more competitive. Logan Gilbert's been great. Bryce Miller's been great. Now all of a sudden you're going to get George Kirby back on track. You've got Castillo back on track. Now we're really cooking with something here. Now we've got 4 really reliable starting pitchers there at any day are going to be tough to beat. We know that they've got some power in this lineup too. Cal Raleigh's starting to hit better. Clase just came up to help out Julio Rodriguez. They're still one bat away. But I still believe in the Mariners regardless of the slow start. And if anything, it's a time to either double down or buy in for the first time because the numbers have moved because of the slow start. And you're going to buy those MVP numbers, you're going to buy those Cy Young numbers, you're going to buy those shares or futures for the Seattle Mariners.
Absolutely, and just putting a push pin in the JP Franz conversation. Look for Forrest Whitley maybe to catch a few starts, and if he's out there, you could be a streaming option. All right, let's shift our focus now down to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and this is a team that last season were hot until one guy went down. Well, look who's cold again. And honestly, Joe, we talk about this from a baseball perspective. They've moved Oneil Cruz up and down in the order, have him hitting 8, have him hit. Let the guy just hit wherever you need him to hit. He's got the tools. I mean, if you look at him and you look at Elly De La Cruz from a physical standpoint, they have a similar makeup, but that's where the similarities stop, in my opinion. Thoughts?
Look, I don't get this. The Pirates are a team that needs to be developing the future. Oneil Cruz is the future. Why are you dropping him to the 8th spot? What are we doing here? Leave him at the top of the order. Let him continue to get at-bats and work through it. That's it. That's the only answer here. And he is a player that always has a high strikeout rate, so you had to take that into account. There's going to be some struggle. And the last week has not been good. You're right. A lot of players have that nowadays. So you have to take the good with the bad. Look at Elly De La Cruz, right? Everybody was freaking out the first week where he had a lot of strikeouts and he wasn't making good contact. The Reds just left him alone. And look what happened. The guy has been lights out ever since. Leave Oneil Cruz alone. I know the last 7 days have been bad. 26 at-bats, no homers, 13 strikeouts. I know that's terrible. .157 batting average. I get it. He's hitting .214 on the year. I understand. And the OPS 379 over the last 7 days. Not good. But Oneil Cruz is a better player than this. In fact, this is a great buy low opportunity on Cruz. He's a very talented player. He's got a lot of upside. So if somebody's very frustrated early on with him, go out there, throw out that low ball offer and try to get Oneil Cruz. But the Pirates are doing themselves and him a disservice by dropping him in the order. It makes no sense to me. It's not how he's going to get better by seeing worse pitches. He needs to be at the top of the order in front of good hitters to see good fastballs that he can actually hit and work through it. Don't drop this kid. It ruins confidence and it ruins the opportunity to get good pitches to hit. It makes no sense to me. The Pirates need a little bit of a check here.
All right. With that said, and the time remaining before stat of the day on the other side of the break, let's break down what's going on with Jonathan India in Cincinnati. He's got the opportunity. He is not making the most of it.
He hasn't. Noelvi Marte went down. Some other injuries. Christian Encarnacion Strand has struggled. But Jonathan India, 22 at-bats the last 7 days, 11 strikeouts, 0 in the batting average, 179 OPS. The guy is not hitting anything right now. Jonathan India, I would be looking right now at Noelvi Marte. How many games left before he comes back? Hopefully soon. We come back. We'll be back soon. So don't go anywhere. We return. Stat of the day.
He just tossed an air ball, like in a critical. You're up by 2 with 20 seconds left. He said, give me the ball, LeBron James, and he tossed an air ball. And there was AD under the bucket fighting everybody, and he ends up going to the free throw line.
They used Tavares as a friggin' pinata tonight. Dude, I know you're old, but get it together. This is your last run at something, man. This is your career, bro. Don't go out like this. Oh, it's hard watching this.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. Taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. That's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, where they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Denominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I mean, they're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here. This is the only show, I promise you, where during the break, one of the hosts checks the IMDb for an old HBO show called First and 10, The Bulls Mean Business. And if you're out there at SportsGrid TV, at Joe Pisapia 17, at Matt Striker TV, if you remember that series, please keep the conversation going. With that said, Joe, we're going to start a new conversation. It's the stat of the day, and it's a pretty intriguing one, especially considering the good plus money you can find on certain props of the nature.
What are the chances you remember that series and you understand how to work a smartphone? I guess those are the two questions there. There you go. But the game has changed, folks. How much has it changed? A lot with the pitch clock and the new stolen base rules. Here's a fun fact for you. Last year in Major League Baseball, as a total, there were 3,500 on the button stolen bases in the game. That is the most since the record amount 3,590 in 1987. We went through some of the names on that list, the Willie Wilsons and Vince Colemans of the world, Harold Reynolds, guys stealing bases all over the place. So not only did it make a huge impact in upping stolen bases, it was almost record level kind of stuff. Yeah. So the changes to the game, very positive. Yesterday, I went to the AA Yankees game last night, had a great time. I saw 18 runs and 28 hits, and it was still over in 2 hours and 40 minutes. What a time to be alive. It was a great time. There were fireworks afterward. There were fireworks during the game, 4 homers, a million pitching changes. Everyone's throwing balls through barn doors. Nobody's pitching. Offense galore, but and some stolen bases too. Some aggressive guys in the base pass. But Matt, that is a stunning difference. It didn't just make an impact. It made a record impact.
It's fantastic because we've been talking about it. How do you make money in April if you don't want to live and die on parlays? You find those over 3-1 stolen base props, and they're out there. Bryce Terang, I'm looking at you, Joe.
Good one there. All right, when we return here for hour 2, we're going to talk about some fantasy football with Derek Brown. We're also going to continue to talk about some buy lows, sell highs, some guys to pick off the waiver wire, a lot to get to help your fantasy teams. But we've also got some injury news up next. So hour 2 of Fantasy Sports Today starts right now.